responsibility in helping the EU protect its single market. As part of this, we are willing to explore exceptional arrangements around data sharing and cooperation, and penalties in legislation to deter those looking to move non-compliant products from Northern Ireland to Ireland. And I repeat, all of this is entirely consistent with maintaining an open border without infrastructural checks between Ireland and Northern Ireland. My Lords, these proposals will require significant change to the Northern Ireland Protocol. We do not shy away from that. We believe such change is necessary to deal with the situation we now face. We look to open a discussion on these proposals urgently. At the same time, we must provide certainty and stability for businesses as we do so. So we believe that we in the EU should also quickly agree a standstill period, as it were, including maintaining the operation of grace periods in force and a freeze on existing legal actions and processes. This is to ensure there is room to negotiate and to provide a genuine signal of good intent to find ways forward. My Lords, the difficulties we have in operating the Northern Ireland Protocol are now the main obstacle to building a relationship with the EU that reflects our strong common interests and values. Instead of that relationship, we are seeing one which is punctuated with legal challenges and characterised by disagreement and mistrust. We do not want that pattern to be set, not least because it does not support stability in Northern Ireland. It's now the time to work to establish a new balance which both the UK and EU can invest in, to provide a platform for peace and prosperity in Northern Ireland, and to allow us to set out on a new path of partnership with the EU. We have today in our command paper set out an approach which we believe can do just that. We urge the EU to look at it with fresh eyes and to work with us to seize this opportunity and to put our relations onto a better footing. We stand ready to work with them to deliver the brighter future that is within reach.
Baroness Chapman of Darlington.
My Lords, I'd like to start by thanking the Noble Lord the Minister for advance sight of his statement. I was surprised, however, to hear so much of the contents of the Minister's statement on the radio this morning. And I know we're both new to this House, but I've learned quickly that, that there's a great value of treating this chamber with respect, and briefing of statements to the media before the House is discourteous. And I hope that the Noble Lord the Minister can reassure us that whatever did or didn't happen today, that this will not become his habit. When the Northern Ireland Protocol was presented as a triumph, I doubt whether the Noble Lord the Minister imagined that he would remain responsible for its implementation, and yet here he finds himself. Can he tell us whether the problems he highlights today were anticipated at the time the agreement was signed? Because if not, they should have been. If they were anticipated by the Minister before the government signed up to the agreement, as I suspect, then I'm afraid, my Lords, that this will damage our international reputation. In his statement, the Minister says he's tried to operate the protocol in good faith, but the technological solutions earlier promised that would have eased the situation have not yet materialised, and that does not look like good faith. The problems he describes are so wide-ranging that if he didn't foresee any of them, this raises serious questions about the government's approach to the negotiations at the time and its attitude to the serious undertakings to which the government committed the country and from which it now seeks to break away. The protocol was described by the Prime Minister as an ingenious solution, and we all remember the Prime Minister's promise to Northern Ireland businesses, and we all remember him saying there'd be no checks whatsoever. He said, if somebody asks you to fill in a form, tell them to ring up the Prime Minister and I'll direct them to throw it in the bin. This is not the first time the Noble Lord the Minister has appeared before this House to discredit his own deal. I regret that this approach has potentially dire consequences for communities in Northern Ireland and also, critically, for our international reputation at a time when we're seeking to forge new agreements. The erosion of trust in our government, an essential component of stability in Northern Ireland, is deeply regrettable and must not be taken lightly. The Noble Lord the Minister's statement I'm afraid, is an admission of failure. The government promised to get Brexit done, and yet here he is, trying to unpick it. The government must find agreement to fix the problems the Prime Minister created. What we have is yet more political brinkmanship, more threats to tear up the protocol with nothing to take its place. My lords, the people of Northern Ireland should not be pawns in a chess match. Communities are tired of these games and the political stalemate. The last thing they need is a summer of crippling uncertainty, which is bad for them and damaging to business across the United Kingdom. The Secretary of State knows that the best way forward is to get a veterinary agreement, as it is the most straightforward way to remove the vast majority of checks. And I'm sure that is what he's saying to the other place right now. But isn't it time the government simply delivered on what they promised? The ongoing standoff is having consequences for Northern Ireland and our relationships with our closest friends and partners. The eyes of governments around the world are on the Minister this afternoon. President Biden and Prime Minister Ardern of New Zealand are among those who need reassurance that the UK will abide by international law and be a partner that they can trust. Is there anything less British than forging an agreement, never having any intention of making it work? And what does the Minister think our friends, allies and future trade partners will make of this? I'm sure the noble Lord the Minister would never advise the Prime Minister to put his own political interests over and above the interests of Northern Ireland. The Minister objects to the EU's previous threat to use Article 16 powers, and I agree with him on this. And I'm pleased that he's made clear that he does not consider now to be the right time for the UK to make use of Article 16 powers. But can he make clear to the House whether, when, and in what circumstances he would resort to such a drastic measure as the use of Article 16? The US State Department has been upfront and told us that they're watching this situation closely and encourage us to find a solution within the terms of the existing agreement we so recently and eagerly entered into. So what conversations has the Minister had with representatives of the Biden administration on his new position? What is the assessment of the impact of today's statement on the favourability likely to be shown to the UK as we seek to make binding deals in the future? And for us to maintain our position as a respected, trusted partner in defence as well as trade, we must show that we keep our word. We do not make deals knowing that we will break them. And I ask the noble Lord the Minister to keep in his mind the people of Northern Ireland. He owes it to them to quickly reach an agreement with the EU and to find a sustainable, long-lasting way forward.
Ms Ludford.
My Lords, this government drove through the arrangement whereby Northern Ireland would have a different customs and regulatory status to Great Britain. The Prime Minister then claimed that this would not lead to controls on trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. This claim was not true. The Prime Minister and his colleagues, including the noble Lord the Minister, knew that the EU needed to protect its single market from unauthorised goods entering it through the back door, that this meant checks in the Irish Sea, and that this was what they had agreed to. Economy with the actuality does not quite do justice to the deception that was perpetrated. What the Prime Minister and his government signed up to, and their misinformation about it, are the real source of the problems and tensions in Northern Ireland, not the EU, which has, true to form, been made the scapegoat. So when the noble Lord the Minister repeatedly says in this House and elsewhere that the protocol is having a bad effect, we're entitled to ask, well, why did you promote it then? The government's refusal to accept the consequences of its own actions and choices around the nature of Brexit is deeply unimpressive. The statement claims that the government has tried to operate the protocol in good faith, but that is not, sadly, the case. The government admits it did not know what the real-world impacts on the ground would be of the protocol, and that the problem is the way it is currently operating. Well, it either knew, as everyone else did, that this was indeed how it would operate with Great Britain and Northern Ireland under different regulatory and customs regimes, in which case it is now dishonest and disingenuous, or it did not, in which case it is incompetent. The answer is, of course, both. Mr Johnson, the Noble Lord Lord Frost and their colleagues wanted a hard Brexit for Great Britain at any cost. The great god of sovereignty was their overlord, and no practical argument could be allowed to impede the achievement of that goal. In fact, the Tory Brexiters gave barely a thought to Northern Ireland, despite claiming to be fervent unionists. Now, the closer the level of alignment, the less the level of checks. Hence, from these benches, we have consistently urged that the best way to eliminate checks on food and agricultural products and animals was to reach a veterinary or SPS agreement with the EU. But the government has stubbornly put ideology before the needs of industry and consumers in refusing to take that or any other level playing field steps. Instead, the government simply throws its hands in the air, cries that the protocol is untenable, and it is up to the EU to show pragmatism and forego most or all checks on goods going from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. You could not make this up again. It's rich from coming from a government which has been thoroughly dogmatic and is a breathtaking passing of the buck. It would be gratifying if the Minister just once, here and now, accepted that he and his colleagues must take full responsibility where we and Northern Ireland are now. So while the Noble Lord the Minister believes the protocol must work in a different way if we're to find the stable route going forward, he now presents us with a set of proposals that have anything but stable and certain prospects, since they are an attempt to rewrite the protocol with an enhanced threat to trigger Article 16. And the choice of confrontation and instability over real solutions and pushing Article 16 as a potential remedy are offering a populist, ineffective and false solution. No major business organisation in Northern Ireland or beyond is calling for Article 16 to be invoked. And if it were, the EU would have the right to take its own rebalancing measures. It is thus not the silver bullet that advocates think it is. One of the new suggestions has been labelled an honesty box approach, whereby companies that said their goods were destined only for sale and use in Northern Ireland should be exempted from checks on the Irish sea border. The deep irony of this from a government that has proved very far short of its honesty and trustworthiness over the protocol does not escape us. My Lords, unilateral action will see a reaction from the Biden administration and have consequences for UK-US relations. In view of the fact that the State Department has urged the UK to, quote, stay within existing mechanisms, since the protocol along with the TCA, quote, protect the gains of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, how will the government prevent harm to the transatlantic relationship that it claims to value so much? It is wholly counterproductive for the government to engage in more brinkmanship and unilateral action rather than working in partnership with the EU to address problems. The real situation is that scope continues to exist to find mutually agreed flexibilities and mitigations within the context of the protocol, consistent with the legal regimes of both the UK and the EU. In that context, can the Noble Lord the Minister tell me what is his reaction to the proposal from the British former senior European Commission official Sir Jonathan Fall in yesterday's Financial Times, a development indeed of proposals he made 2 years ago, and which amount to mutual enforcement or dual autonomy, protecting the integrity of both the UK's and the EU's internal markets, and based on well-tested international trade practice. The UK would introduce, as a matter of domestic law, EU rules only for goods which are exported to the EU and vice versa, and national courts could be empowered to make references to the Supreme Court of the other party in case of doubt about interpretation. As Sir Jonathan says, this idea preserves UK regulatory autonomy with compliance and legal requirement here, not an obligation imposed by a foreign power. It avoids the complexities of the level playing field arrangements of the TCA. So will the government pick it up and run with it? After all, the EU hates it, so this government must find it very attractive. My Lords, such a scheme would need mature and rational consideration in a climate of trust with the EU. What the government is now doing is sadly the very opposite of that.
The Lord Frost.
My Lords, I thank the Noble Baroness Chapman, and the Noble Baroness Ludford for their comments. There's a lot there, and I will try to deal with them as I can. But can I just begin by picking up the point that the noble Baroness Chapman made at the start about respect for this House in terms of briefing, I'd like to reassure her and the noble lords that we have not engaged in any such briefing. It is necessary for statements of this kind to engage in a certain limited amount of diplomatic contact beforehand, and no doubt that's the source of some of what is read in the press this morning, but I would not like anyone to think that we were not showing appropriate respect to this House in the way we have gone about this matter. Turning to the substance, a lot was said about us not standing by our commitments as a government, about unilateral actions and so on, which I find slightly surprising because obviously that's not what we've proposed. We have proposed a way forward that is based on consensus, that is based on negotiation, that is the responsible thing to do in these circumstances. We've always said that all options remain on the table, but we have chosen the way of negotiation and compromise, and we hope that the EU will respond to that in that way. We believe the possibilities, if they do so, are really quite exciting. So that's the way we would like to proceed. The issue is raised of why we did not foresee this situation, and I think what I would say on that point is that the current protocol reflects the extraordinary circumstances in which it was agreed, when this government risked being unable to deliver on a democratically determined referendum result, and when its negotiating hand was tied by actions in this Parliament. We proposed, but eventually agreed, a protocol that was substantially different to our initial proposals, particularly in customs arrangements, and in limiting the consent principle. We thought these changes might well cause problems, but we thought that with a pragmatic and light touch application of the rules, the right thing to do was to try to make the protocol work. And of course we could not predict the future. We could not have foreseen the political turbulence the EU would spark off with its Article 16 proposal in January. We did not anticipate the very purist application that would be required of some of its provisions. So we've all learned from experience. It is clear that we now know what is working and what is not, and we believe the best way to resolve the situation is to try to negotiate changes, and we don't see what's wrong with that. Anyone would think that it was a highly unusual thing to negotiate a treaty, renegotiate a treaty. Of course it is not. To take one example, the UK-France Treaty on juxtaposed controls was itself a supplementary protocol to an agreement reached in 1986, signed in 1991, renegotiated in 2000, renegotiated in 2007 as the nature of the juxtaposed controls and the situation they were working in changed. So there's nothing particularly unusual in this, and we don't apologise for that. The issue of the issue of checks between Northern Ireland and Great Britain was raised, and the noble Baroness raised the issue of the Prime Minister's comments throwing forms in the bin. I would note that he made those comments in the context of movements from Northern Ireland to Great Britain, and indeed there are no forms for such movements. That was something we secured with the EU in 2020, and that unfettered access is extremely important for these arrangements. My Lords, the issue is raised of trust. That's extremely important, clearly. I think it takes trust. Trust takes two. And the EU's action on vaccines on Article 16, the immediate resort to legal action to try to stop people in Northern Ireland from going on holiday to Great Britain with their pets, also are not actions that are conducive to trust. We don't want a relationship with high levels of mistrust. The current problems in the relationship are caused by the extreme difficulties in operating the protocol reasonably, and if we can get to a better protocol, we will have resolved some of those problems, and that is why we are trying to proceed by consensus and get to a better situation. The issue of people in Northern Ireland is raised. Of course, the protocol itself requires there to be no impact or minimised impact on the everyday lives of people in Northern Ireland. That the fact that that is not being observed is one of the major problems with the current situation, and that is why we wish to see if we can resolve it in a sort of negotiated way. The issue of the veterinary agreement is raised. We have made clear what our position is on that an agreement by equivalence could solve the problems, but actually what we are proposing in this command paper is something more fundamental. It is dealing with the fundamentals of the difficulties rather than the problems, and our proposal for a dual regulatory zone with appropriate processes backing it up, and one of those things could be a veterinary agreement, will resolve these issues in a more fundamental way. The issue of Article 16 is raised. We set out the thinking on that, of course, in the command paper, and it is a very legitimate tool for use within the protocol. That's why it's there, and we made clear that the situation would justify, if we wished to, use of Article 16 both to deal with current issues arising, for example chilled meats parcels and so on, and also the broader arrangements under which goods enter Northern Ireland from Great Britain. But we have chosen not to go down that route. We prefer to proceed by negotiation, and I hope we can. A few final points, if I may. The issue of the United States, I've seen the comments from the US State Department spokesman overnight, in which he urges everyone to solve differences by negotiation and protect the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, and we absolutely 100% agree with that, and that is what we have set out today. The issue of stability in Northern Ireland is a very important one. Business needs stability. The problem is we don't have stability now. And anyone who heard the comments from the chair of Marks and Spencer's this morning and has seen his letter will be very clear of the kind of extreme difficulties that businesses will face if we simply proceed without trying to rectify the situation. We don't have stability now. We need to produce a solution that will generate stability and get us forward into the future. So, my lords, we look to make proposals. We have made proposals that set out a negotiated approach. They are significant, they are substantive, they offer a good chance, in our view, of resolving difficulties on a durable basis, and we very much hope that the EU will look at them, consider them carefully, and go forward with us on that journey.
We now come to the 20 minutes allocated for backbench questions. I ask that questions and answers be brief so that I can call the maximum number of speakers. Lord Jay of UM.
My Lords, I'm grateful to the Noble Lord the Minister for giving evidence last week to your Lordship's committee on the protocol which I chair, and we greatly look forward to future such meetings too. We will, of course, study the proposals and the white paper carefully. Meanwhile, I have one question for the Noble Lord the Minister. He spoke about trust. Could the Minister confirm that the government will do all it can to build, or perhaps I should say to rebuild, the trust between the British government, the European Union and the Irish government that is essential if we are collectively to find a resolution to the protocol that is in the interests of all communities in Northern Ireland and which they profoundly deserve?
My Lords, I actually very much agree with those comments. I could spend time, but won't, in looking at the origins of the situation and why the situation of mistrust has been established. I don't think it's helpful to do so today. We're looking forward. We have to deal with the situation as it is. And a very clear proposal to proceed by negotiation, to proceed by agreement, to proceed by discussion will, we hope, begin to help re-establish some of the trust which is lacking, it seems, on both sides.
Lord Kane.
My Lords, rigid and theological implementation of the protocol has severely disrupted trade, adversely impacted consumers, has hit businesses in both Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and has contributed to political instability. In welcoming my noble friend's statement, therefore, does he agree that it is now the time for the EU fully to respect Northern Ireland's position within the UK internal market, along with the constitutional and economic integrity of our United Kingdom? Failing that, can I assure my noble friend that he will be entirely justified in taking whatever unilateral action is necessary to remedy the current unsustainable situation, and in so doing will have the strong support of many of us?
I thank my noble friend for his comments, and he's obviously absolutely correct in saying that the place of Northern Ireland in the United Kingdom, in its single market, in the customs territory, is protected on the face of the protocol and is absolutely fundamental, and it is the doubts that have been allowed to develop on that subject that are part of the reasons why we face the situation that we do face today.
Baroness Ritchie of Downpatrick.
My Lords, in light of the absence of trust caused by the original internal market bill last September and the unilateral extensions of grace periods in March, how confident is the noble Lord, the Minister, that the EU will have the appetite to consider such a fundamental departure from the protocol in terms of Article 5? After all, the UK government negotiated, agreed and ratified the protocol.
My Lords, obviously we will have to see how the EU reacts to these proposals. I hope they will consider them seriously as a significant proposal to find a durable settlement. It is true they are significant changes to the protocol text and will require that, but we hope that the EU will see that the prize of a settlement which is durable and which allows us to move on is worth the process issue of reopening the protocol text. We must keep our eyes on the prize and what we're trying to do here.
Baroness Gowdy.
My Lords, the trust is clearly broken and must be repaired. The protocol would have not been necessary, but it is now, and it is an imperfect solution to a problem unnecessarily caused and created. It does, however, avoid crippling blow to the peace process that a hard line border would have represented and would represent. And it does contain special measures to protect human rights and equality until someone suggests a better solution. Also, my Lords, it is vital as part of the Good Friday Agreement that investment would be coming to Northern Ireland. And this, I hope that this government will continue to encourage with the other partners of the Good Friday Agreement. Can the Minister give me an undertaking that this is still happening, and what plans has he got to take it further? And working with our colleagues in Europe and the United States.
My Lords, we're obviously ready to work with anybody, and our plans are in train to encourage investment into Northern Ireland. I believe there are some events in prospect in the next few months. I think the noble Baroness is right to call the protocol an imperfect solution. I think it's very clear it is imperfect. I would say, as she does, that much of the protocol is not in question. Issues such as common travel area, human rights, and the Good Friday Agreement, and so on, those are not controversial. What we've got to do is make sure that the trade arrangements and the governance arrangements of the protocol work better, and the proposals we've put on the table work with the concepts in the protocol to try and achieve just that.
Lord Empton.
My Lords, today is not the day to enter into a discussion on how we got into this mess, but one particular fact is clear. The businesses and the people of Northern Ireland are the innocent victims of a situation which they did not create and did not want. With that in mind, can I turn to my question, my noble friend, which is, are we seriously as a government going to look at real alternatives that are capable of resolving these issues within the concept of the Belfast Agreement, which I believe has been completely demolished by the current protocol? We want new arrangements that are workable, coherent, and long-lasting, and will bring the stability that businesses and consumers in Northern Ireland urgently need.
My Lords, I very much agree with the thrust of my noble friend's comments. The proposals we have put on the table are, I think, significant and pretty fundamental in the way that they would adjust the way the trading arrangements of the protocol work. They're intended to be durable. They're intended to do something different, significantly different to what is done now. But as I say, we work in these proposals with concepts of the protocol. We've not swept it away. We don't agree that the right thing is simply to scrap the protocol and that nothing need fill its place. We believe the right thing is to work with the grain, use the concepts, but use them to make sure that the arrangements work in a significantly different fashion.
Lord Purvis of Tweed.
Lords, decisions made by the Boris Johnson government, not the EU, over the last year has meant for the first time in our history, a government of the UK is compelling UK businesses who trade within the UK to Northern Ireland to register with the government as an exporter. Any goods from GB to Northern Ireland will have to be separately conformity assessed and separately labelled. And this month, new parcel and shipping taxes for consumers set by a foreign power are now being paid by people over which we have no representation whatever. There is no mention of these in the command paper at all. Does that mean that businesses are going to have to live with this unacceptable and outrageous burden on UK businesses trading within the UK?
My Lords, we have put out in the command paper the very high level elements of the approach we wish to pursue, and of course we want to discuss the detail with the European Union, including in many areas. What we are proposing is an extremely light touch measure to now allow trade to flow freely within the UK customs union and within the UK single market, and we think that is a reasonable response to the situation that currently prevails.
Baroness Noakes.
My Lord, I very much welcome my noble friend's statement, and I hope that the whole House will join me in praising his huge efforts to try to make our relationship with the EU work effectively. Does my noble friend agree that the guiding star should be what works for the citizens of Northern Ireland? And if the EU could shift to a people-centric approach rather than a rule-centric approach, we could start to make some real progress.
I very much agree with the thrust of my noble friend's comments. The impact of the protocol on everyday lives in Northern Ireland is a significant part of the difficulty. And again, if one looks at the comments from the chair of Mark Spencer's, we see the risks to everyday life. For example, the risk of not being able to deliver supplies for Christmas under the current arrangements. And I don't think that's what either the European Union or we actually want in this situation. And if we can focus on the practicalities and the reality of the situation and try and find a way through, we'll all be the better for it.
Lord Dodds of Duncan.
My Lords, clearly the Northern Ireland Protocol is not fit for purpose. It's not working or delivering for Northern Ireland. And your Lordships, if any of you visit Northern Ireland, talk to people, you will know that immediately, and the noble Lord the Minister has done that frequently. Whatever the benefits are, they're massively outweighed by the disadvantages in economic and societal and political terms. But can the noble Lord the Minister assure me that at the end of this process of renegotiation, or if direct action may be necessary by the government, that we will end up in a position that the new balance of arrangements will restore Northern Ireland to its proper place with no Irish sea border and with elected representatives of the people of Northern Ireland, either here or in the Assembly, having the final say over the laws that govern Northern Ireland.
My Lords, it's clear that the balance that we have in the protocol is not working at the moment, and I've explained why, obviously on many occasions. I think the issue raised by the Noble Lord is one reason why we think changes to the governance arrangements in this protocol are so important. It simply does not fit with the reality of the situation to have laws imposed and policed by institutions outside the UK territory and subject to judgments from a court that is not a court of the UK. And if we can agree that, and I recognise it is a significant point, I think we will find some of the problems raised by the Noble Lord beginning to melt away.
The Earl of Canol.
My Lords, there are 32 committees set up under the TCA and the withdrawal agreement, only 3 of which are directly relevant to the Northern Ireland Protocol, leaving 29 that are not, presumably now 30 with the overnight news on Gibraltar. Does the Noble Lord the Minister share the concerns that many have that the trust problems that are taking place within the Northern Ireland Protocol might leak across to these other 30 forums, which would be most unfortunate? And if he does share those concerns, what is the government doing to address that?
My Lords, I do think that where there are trust problems between us and the European Union, they stem from ultimately from the issues that we have on the protocol, and I 100% agree with the Noble Lord that we must try to nip that in the bud and stop it getting in the way, in a durable way, of the rest of the relationship. The issue of Gibraltar that he raises obviously is a dispute about a different issue. Obviously there are analogous elements, but I think it's important to keep these things separate. The mandate that the EU agreed yesterday does seem to be problematic in a number of ways, as my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, made clear yesterday, but I don't think it makes sense to connect one thing with another. We deal with each of these issues in their own terms and try to proceed in a constructive way.
Lord Thomas of Gresford.
My Lord, 7 months ago, the Noble Lord the Minister negotiated and signed the protocol and presented it to the British people as a triumph. Today, he stands at the dispatch box and says, it's rubbish, doesn't work, we've got to have something better. My Lords, wouldn't the best way of resolving the trust problems to which you referred, the first step, be for the Minister to resign for a gross failure of government policy for which he is personally responsible?
So, my Lords, the protocol, of course, was agreed nearly 2 years ago now, and a lot of water has flown under the bridge since then. We are saying, and we continue to say, that it needs improvement. We have experience that elements of the protocol are not working well, and there is nothing wrong with trying to improve elements of the treaty. It happens all the time.
Baroness Hurry.
Thank the Noble Lord for his time spent in Northern Ireland, listening to people, and for the recognition that the protocol is not working and can't work. And I do welcome the proposed changes, particularly the importance of removing Northern Ireland to being subject to EU rules and the EU court without any say. But could the Noble Lord, the Minister, give us some idea of time scale in terms of just how long these negotiations might go on before it is felt time to actually do something more drastic? Does he agree with me that if the European Union really is concerned about peace and stability in Northern Ireland, then they will respond positively to these proposals and respond very speedily?
My Lords, there are plenty of deadlines in this process already, and I don't want to add to them by generating others. We have proposed, and I will write shortly to the Commission proposing a standstill, and obviously if a standstill can be agreed, it will take away some of the significance of the end of the expiry of the current grace period. So I very much hope we will be able to do that, because obviously if we can't, the 30 September deadline is not very far away, and we don't want to be faced with the same situation that we have been faced with before on chilled meats, and have to focus on solving the cliff edge problem rather than dealing with the fundamental underlying problems.
Lord Lilly.
My Lords, I welcome my noble friend's practical and forward-looking proposals and deplore the backward-looking point scoring of both opposition front benches. Can my noble friend confirm that although the EU and its apologists in this House claim that the protocol requires rigid application of all EU rules and checks on goods entering Northern Ireland from Great Britain, in fact, Article 6 says the Joint Committee shall adopt appropriate recommendations to avoid controls at the ports and airports in Northern Ireland to the extent possible. So if the EU refuse to respond positively to his proposals, they will be in breach of both the letter and spirit of the protocol.
My noble friend, as always, makes a very good point. The issue of the requirements in Article 5 and the requirement in Article 6 to avoid checks and controls is of course one of the areas where you can't just read the protocol straight. You've got to look at the purpose, and you've got to look at the way its different provisions interact. It's certainly arguable that the Article 6 provisions, commitments are not being delivered upon, but we have not so far sought to argue that, because the protocol is a political and purposive document, and we believe that the right way to solve the problems arising is in a political way, rather than immediately reaching for legal arguments and processes.
Care of Kinlochard.
This is serious business, my lords. Our Queen's name is on this treaty that we now want to change. The Minister correctly points to precedents for changes to treaties, but I can't recall any precedent for our condoning, still less ourselves proposing, unilateral action if we don't get a negotiated change. The other side don't agree. 3 particular questions. Precise answers, please, Minister, now or in writing. First, on good faith, how do you square with the treaty's Article 5 our continuing refusal to allow the EU access to the customs database as we said we would? Second, on goods at risk, how do you square your honesty box proposal with what the protocol's Article 5.2 says about onus of proof? And 3, finally, on Article 16, safeguards, which the Minister mentioned, which UK exporters would the government expect to be hit by EU rebalancing measures under the protocol's Article 16.2?
My Lords, on those 3 points very briefly, we do allow access to the databases. We have recently agreed enhanced access, and we have a discussion in train to allow further access. We have no difficulty with access to data. Indeed, our own solution requires quite wide access to data to provide reassurances. It's certainly true on the second point that what we are proposing is not consistent with Article 5 as it stands. That's why we need to change it. Our system is, what we are proposing is I guess a trust and verify system, which is perfectly normal in business and in these arrangements, and we think it will work very well in this context too. And on Article 16, I think I've set out where we are on this issue. We hope that it will not be necessary to use Article 16. We're trying to proceed by agreement, so hopefully the contingency evoked by the noble Lord will not arise.
My Lords, the time allowed for backbench questions on this statement has now elapsed. I will allow a minute for changeover, and we'll then proceed with the rest of the business.
We're getting more of a voice. I know, I can't help it.
can you move on? The House to be again in committee on the Skills and Post-16 Education Bill. Minister.
My Lords, I beg to move that the House do now again resolve itself to be a committee upon the bill.
The question is that the House do now again resolve itself into a committee upon the bill. As many areas of that opinion shall say content, the contrary not contents, the contents have it. Amendment 90. After clause 25, Amendment 90, Lord Willetts.
My Lords, I wish to move Amendment 90 in my name, a new clause which provides for the review and updating of the terms of higher education loans and repayments every 5 years. And before I briefly turn to that, can I just say to the House and to the Minister that it is much appreciated the government has set aside 4 days for consideration of this important bill in committee. This is actually the last amendment that I will be moving, and so this is the right moment to thank her for her engagement with the issues. And I just wanted to assure her that all the amendments I brought forward are aimed at improving and helping the government achieve its policy objectives. But I realise that there may well be a reaction to this amendment, a very understandable reaction, that higher education finance is so difficult and so controversial that the last thing we need is a provision to look at it every 5 years. But in reality, because the system is so important in the public finances and so politically charged, it is being changed and has been changed in an ad hoc way from time to time. And what I try to do in this amendment is provide some framework so it can be reviewed and updated